So let's talk about my autism, my traits, disability, easy mode in SIFU, and a continuation of the video that I made last week, which I received a lot of hate, a lot of ableist comments, a lot of ignorance, a lot of just hateful people who are privileged in their life to not be disabled, talking about what disabled people should do, want, or need from the world. A lot of comments that I got were just get good, get skill, overcome your disability, and you'll have a big reward. This is one of the most ignorant things that I could imagine. Because you're privileged to not have a disability, you have no idea what it is to have a disability. So you cannot tell people to get over their disability if you have no idea about disability, if that makes sense. Accessibility has nothing to do with skill or capability. And I'm going to give you a real world reference because it might be a little bit easier for you to understand and translate that information into gaming, which I'm going to talk about too. So let's say there's a wheelchair user on public transport on a train, for instance. That wheelchair user is more than capable in their life as a disabled person, because for the most part, they were probably born disabled and they will be used to using a wheelchair. They know how to get on and off public transport. They know how to go about their life every day, go to work, go to the store, the shops. You know, they are capable. They have skill in what they need to do. Accessibility is when there are extra tools and options for that disabled person to be able to live their life. So let's say that train pulls into a train station. Now, usually there's an assistant on board, or the driver themselves, or the train station will meet that train and place down an accessibility disabled ramp so that that person who is the wheelchair user can get off safely off the train. That is what accessibility is. It doesn't mean that the person's useless or not capable. It just means they need that extra option to be able to get off public transport. So the equivalency with that metaphor in the train, you people who are saying get good, get skill, you would expect the disabled person to not have that ramp, crawl off the train with their wheelchair in their teeth. Like, that's what you're suggesting. You're suggesting that they need to overcome their disability because they'll have a bigger reward. So you would expect that person to drag themselves off the train without the safety and accessibility with the disabled ramp. That accessibility ramp doesn't impact your life whatsoever. You're just on the train waiting for the train to move on. It doesn't impact your life whatsoever. So you have no right to be upset and angry over that option for someone else to live a normal life. And just to talk about ableism very briefly, what that is projecting what you believe to be capability onto a disabled person because you don't have a disability. You have all the privilege and benefit in the world of being quote unquote normal. And I say that normal in quotation marks because that distinction makes me angry, but just for this video to help people understand a little bit better, normal in this context is not being disabled. You have no right to speak for disabled people. I have no right to speak for that wheelchair person, much like a lot of people don't have the right to talk about autism because that's my disability. However, speaking for someone and advocating are two very different things. I advocate for an easy option in SIFU for disability, not because I can't complete the game, because I've completed the game and my capability within gaming doesn't speak for everyone's capability whatsoever. What makes me be able to advocate is simple. I'm disabled, so I know generally what a lot of disabled people need. And on top of that, I've worked with hundreds of disabled people with varying challenges, and I understand what they need from the world, and that directly translates into gaming too. Now, a lot of people left messages saying they can't cater to every single person's needs. Yeah, that's why I'm advocating for an easy mode and not for specific things of accessibility, because it's impossible. Because a neurological disability like autism and myself have very different needs to someone with one arm or no hand, or anything to do with their finer movements and not being able to hold a controller. Very different disabilities. Of course, the developers cannot cater for every single person. And that's my point. That's why an easy mode as an option is a general accessibility for people to join the game and try to get over their challenges or their problems, but it gives them the option to be able to be included in the game, to see whether or not they like it, to see whether or not they can improve on it, to see whether or not the game is for them. Easy mode will be an option because they're adding easy mode. That doesn't impact you whatsoever at all. The same way that ramp doesn't, easy mode does not impact your life. I got a lot of comments saying, oh, it takes away from the intended gaming experience. You don't have to choose easy mode. You can continue to play the game as it's supposedly intended. It doesn't impact you whatsoever because someone else is playing on easy mode, disabled or not. It doesn't matter. If you're getting angry and upset over an easy mode option being added, which develops a lot of inclusion and accessibility for a lot of people, you're the problem because you don't have to pick easy. And by suggesting that disabled people shouldn't enjoy games, which I was told, shouldn't be able to play games because we're disabled, and other people telling me that I suffer from mental illness, so I can't play video games, even though it's a neurological disorder, autism, which has nothing to do with mental illness. You know, that kind of ignorance and ableism is why I'm making the second video now to talk about autism. So let's talk about autism. First and foremost, I don't speak for the community who are autistic because my traits and what I struggle with are very different from every single other autistic person with their own personal traits. I am also not slighting or trashing the developers because this game is incredible. I think this game will be game of the year, regardless of whatever else comes out this year. And there's a lot of good games coming out this year. SIFU should be game of the year because it is incredible. The aesthetics, how beautiful it is, the mechanics, the fluidity, the music and audio, just everything is perfect. So again, dumbing down for the sake of this video, autism basically is our brains act differently. We receive and translate information in a very different way from neurotypical people. And again, in quotation marks, neurotypical is normal. Realistically, it just means without autism or without neurodiversity. But I'm not really going to get into the semantics of what's right and wrong in being when you're talking about autism, because that's a whole nother video for a whole nother time. I just want to make this general and basic so that people can follow and understand. One of my major problems is sensory. So a lot of autistic people have sensory problems. You're either hyposensitive, where you are undersensitive to smell and sight, etc. And hypersensitivity is when you're oversensitive. A lot of neurotypical people have these challenges as well. For autistic people, it's detrimental to their day-to-day living, whereas when you're neurotypical, you probably don't even realize that anything is happening because your body naturally has instincts to regulate the stress and anxiety tied to those experiences. So for instance, I am hyposensitive to smell. I don't smell a lot very often. It's very difficult for me to pick up scents around me. When people say, can you smell that? I'm like, no, I can't. And I am hypersensitive to sunlight and light. So a lot of the time I have to have dimmed lighting in my room. And a lot of the time I need to move away from anything with light to kind of regulate. I usually sit on the floor in like underneath my desk just to get away from the light. But the kicker is when you're stressed and anxious, those feelings go exponentially higher. So I start to smell things. So for instance, it's kind of the best way for me to describe it. When I was playing SIFU and I was getting consistently stressed and anxious, and at the time had the inability to regulate those experiences in the way that I need to, such as holding one of these or smelling them when my smell does get hypersensitive, that helps me regulate those experiences. And the light becomes 10 times brighter, which obviously is very impactful when you're sitting down playing for 3 hours, 4 hours on a live stream. For me, when that happens and it starts to get higher in experience, I will be able to smell things around me. So like the heat of my Xbox, I'll be able to smell it. The heat of the light, I'll be able to smell it. The light will obviously get a lot brighter and affect my vision. But then also things like I'll be able to hear the light bulb crackling, like I'll be able to hear my TV screen buzzing. while I'm playing, even with headphones on. And then when my headphones are on, then game sound goes higher too. So, you can obviously see it'd be very, very challenging to kind of try and consolidate all of that extra sensory stuff going on and regulate it to be able to consistently move forward and progress with your life. It's very, very difficult, to the point where, for me as an autistic person, and for a lot of autistic people, when you are expecting to go out into the world where you're going to have a sensory filled day. So like, say I'm going to university, which I was doing recently, I would leave my house at 10 o'clock in the morning, go to Birmingham City Centre, and I'd spend 2 to 3 hours in Birmingham City Centre, usually with my headphones in. That's so that I can exercise a little bit as well, but also eat and, just experience what I'm going to experience, because I know it's going to be busy. I know it's going to be noisy. I know there's going to be a lot of people. So I'll go there early. I'll take in all of that sensory stuff, and then I'll travel to uni for 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so that I can sit in a silent room in university until 6 o'clock at night, which is when our university course started. So for me to go to a university class, I have to leave 8 hours before my class starts, because I need that time to be able to regulate my sensory emotions. Whereas for yourself, if you used to go to university, you could probably leave an hour before and just get there and do your class. But if I don't do the things that I need to do, I wouldn't be able to focus, I wouldn't be able to concentrate, and then I'd fail university. And also sensory stuff like that will impact me for days after. So in the moment, I can act and I can be capable as I need to be within the day that I'm having. But 2-3 days after that, I need time to regulate all of that impactful stress. And that's consisted of basically me segregating myself from the world. So let's talk about how that would impact day-to-day life. If I was working, if I had a job, a 9-to-5 job in a restaurant or an office, and I have a particularly bad day, I wouldn't be able to function in work for 2 to 3 days. Jobs aren't very good at understanding accessibility, so they would want you there 5 days a week. So if I'm working there 5 days a week, having 2 days off, and then 5 days a week again, you can imagine over time, I'm going to be an absolute mental health mess, because I don't have the required time that I need as an autistic person to be able to regulate and focus and be a functional person. That's where accessibility comes in. A job place could have me work for 3 days and have 4 days off. Work for 3 days, we'll have 4 days off. That's accessibility. That's helping disabled people be included in day-to-day life. Let's not even talk about things like friendships and relationships, romantic stuff, because that is a whole heap of challenges, which I don't have the time to get into today. But as you can imagine, these traits, these autistic traits and sensory challenges and all the things that I need to regulate, I can't have a normal life like everyone else does. I have to figure out a way to navigate a normal life while also caring for myself and making sure I don't freak out. And when all those sensory things build up and the anxiety and stress is there, then things get a little bit weird. So when it comes to gaming and SIFU specifically, I want to talk about two things: interoception and experiencing things in slow motion, which is kind of wild to try and explain, but I'll try. So a lot of people think there are 5 senses. There are actually 7. So you have the normal 5 senses, and then you have proprioception, which is PRIO ception. And that's included with vestibular as well, which technically should be an 8th sense, but they kind of work together. And that is basically the awareness of your surroundings and your movement within those surroundings. So a lot of people see this as being clumsy, when realistically that is an actual sense. It's, recently not discovered, but recently kind of named. And autistic people have a lot of challenges in that area, whereas neurotypical people don't. I want to talk about interoception, which is interoception. This is something that I have major challenges with. When I get anxious and when I get stressed, I become hyper aware of my inside, my organs inside, and that's what interoception is. So when I'm playing and I'm stressed, and I've been playing for 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, I've been streaming, I start to be able to feel my body working. So I'll be able to feel my stomach churning and kind of breaking down food and the acid in there. my heart pumping. I'll be able to feel that. I'll be able to feel the blood like pumping through my veins, like this cold liquid going through my entire body. My lungs detracting and expanding, like I can feel that happening as I'm playing. So you can imagine that that's quite a challenge when you're trying to do video content and live streaming, to have to kind of just let that happen and push through it. But if you don't regulate it, or you don't do the right coping mechanisms, that can have a long-lasting impact on your mental health. Let's talk about slow motion experience. So the best way that I can explain it is when that anxiety hits a certain point and a certain level, my whole sensory makeup starts to see things in slow motion. Now, I don't have a special power where I can slow down time, but it kind of is a little bit like that. So let's talk about SIFU. Let's say I enter a room and there's 10 enemies. Normal time continues as it is. So enter the room, exit the room, try and get it into focus, enter, exit. That's the normal timeline. Now for me, I'll start to see slow motion here if my anxiety is higher. So normal timeline, me. I'll start to see that in slow motion until I reduce my stress and anxiety. So let's just say the normal timeline ends here, but because I'm seeing it in slow motion, it's going a little bit beyond it in my brain and how I experience it. So say that's real time and this is slow motion time. There's going to be a point where these need to meet. My stress reduces and it just goes bang, back together. So I lose something, like my experience of it in slow motion and where real time ends. I lose a reference. I lose something that's happened because my brain and real time are trying to get back to the same point. This doesn't happen often to me, but it is when my stress and anxiety is at its highest. It can happen. It's happened to me when I've been out in the real world. But gaming, this is the first time it's happened with SIFU. Well, not the first time. It happens with Destiny as well, but it's not the same as to what I'm talking about right now. I know that sounds confusing, but I'm trying to explain it the best that I can. Now, when that slow motion happens, you can imagine it'd be very confusing, very stressful, and it impacts your health, your mental health quite a lot. You know, when something like that happens, then I need to take time off. That's why I haven't uploaded a video for 5 days, because I needed that break from what I was doing to help kind of regulate and make me functional again, so that when Destiny 2 Witch Queen comes out, I'll be able to actually make videos. So you can imagine how much of a pain stuff like this is when you're trying to live a normal day-to-day life. And that's why I advocate for an easy mode, because even though I'm capable and I've completed the game, if I had an easy mode that I could just switch off to every now and again and just play, these experiences of sensory overload, anxiety, stress would be much, 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 much reduced, if that's even the right proper English language, I don't know. But not only that would help me, there's a lot of disabled people out there who couldn't even play the game to my level, who would be able to have access to a wicked, cool, awesome, amazing game where it doesn't impact anyone else. If you're still here, or if by any chance any of the developers ever see this video, this game is incredible. It's one of my top 10 games of all time. I love it. I'm just very sad that I can't play it to a normal degree like most people can. But anytime I get on and play the game, it's awesome. It's amazing. I'd recommend it to absolutely anybody. It's not about challenge. It's not about skill. It's about accessibility for everybody and inclusion for everybody, because easy mode doesn't impact anyone. It just allows more people to play the game. That's the video. If you're still here, I love you. You're awesome. Thank you for watching. I've been easynow. You guys have been awesome.